I turned 65 on a Wednesday. No candles, no balloons, no phone calls at midnight, like the ones we used to share when he was in college. Just a square brown box on my porch with a shipping label and a name spelled in stiff printed font. To Mrs. Patterson, the lady who loves cookies. No mom, no Loretta. Just that. It was postmarked from a warehouse address 2 states away. The return name read, "Fulfilled by Sweet Crate Inc." I didn't even need to open it to know it wasn't chosen by him. Or if it was with the same kind of thoughtless efficiency he'd used the last few years, when he'd begun outsourcing love to delivery services. I opened it anyway. Inside was a bright orange crinkle paper lining and a neatly packaged assortment of 12 cookies, each individually wrapped. Macadamia, double chocolate, red velvet. Some flavors I loved. Some I was allergic to, and some I'd never tried because they'd never asked. Beneath the cookies sat a card, machine printed, matte finish. Happy birthday to the sweetest lady we know. With love from all of us. Elliot, Meadow, Tommy, and Emma. The signature wasn't in his handwriting, not even a scribbled note. Not a single line that felt like Elliot, the Elliot I raised, who once baked me a crooked cake with his 7-year-old hands and sang, "You are my sunshine," off key, but full of heart. I closed the lid, slowly, quietly, as if the sound of cardboard sealing shut might break me open. The rest of the day passed like fog. I didn't cry, I didn't get angry. I just sat in the living room, hands folded in my lap like an old woman who had wandered into a stranger's home and forgotten why she was there. Around 6:30, I checked my phone. No missed calls, no text saying, "Can we stop by later?" Just an email from Meadow sent 3 hours earlier. "Hi Loretta, hope the cookies arrived okay. We picked them based on your sweet tooth, LOL. So glad we could make your day special even though we're super swamped this week. Let's catch up soon." She signed it with a sunflower emoji and the word hugs. I stared at that sunflower for a full minute. I'd once told her I was allergic to sunflowers. It was during the baby shower she planned when she decorated the whole table with them. I'd broken out in hives for 2 days and she had called it a fluke. But some things aren't accidents. Some things are little knives in small envelopes. At 8:12 p.m., I did something I hadn't done in years. I went back and scrolled through all our old text threads. Back when Elliot would send me photos of the kids' drawings. Back when Tommy used to say Grandma is my best friend and Meadow would pretend to laugh like she didn't mind. Back when I still felt like I belonged. Now the last 10 messages were all logistical. We won't make it. Sunday, Meadow's mom is in town. "Can you reschedule for next weekend? Emma has a recital." "Oh, wait. Didn't we tell you?" "No, you didn't." I went into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of wine, the kind Elliot used to buy me on Mother's Day. He hasn't remembered my favorite in 2 years. The wine was stale. Or maybe I was. I pulled the cookies out again and laid them on the counter one by one like I was laying out evidence in a silent trial. Each cookie was perfect, professionally made, shipped cold, sterile, like Meadow's emails, like her hugs, like the way she says Loretta with just enough upward tilt to sound respectful but not warm. I spent most of the evening staring at those cookies until I realized I wasn't thinking about dessert. I was thinking about how easily one woman could shift the gravity of a family. It didn't happen all at once. It started when Sunday dinners became just this weekend with Meadow's family. When Christmas morning moved to an early brunch, just us and the kids. When I went from Grandma to Loretta in Tommy's mouth. And now, this. A box of cookies, a printed card, and a space in my chest where something used to be. That night I wrote a letter, by hand, on real paper. I didn't address it to Elliot. I addressed it to Meadow, because I realized she was the one running the show now. She always had been, and I had spent too long pretending I didn't see it. Dear Meadow, thank you for the cookies, and for the card, and for the reminder that I've been slowly edited out of my own family's story, one polite gesture at a time. I used to believe that kindness would win, that patience and silence were virtues, That one day you'd let me back in. Now I know better. You never forgot me. You erased me. But Meadow, here's the thing about people like me. We were raised to clean up behind everyone, to remember birthdays no one asked us to celebrate, to sacrifice silently. That doesn't mean we're weak. It just means we wait and watch. And when we finally speak, it's with purpose. I'll be seeing you soon. In my way. Sincerely, Loretta Patterson. I folded the letter and slid it into a cream-colored envelope. No return address. No postage. This one wouldn't go through the mail. This one I would deliver at the perfect moment. That was the night something shifted. Not in them, but in me. That was the night I realized I wasn't going to fade quietly into a soft grandmother cliché. I wasn't going to keep smiling while Meadow rearranged the furniture of our lives until I didn't have a chair left at the table. That was the night I became dangerous, not despite my silence, but because of it. 3 days after my birthday, the cookies were still sitting on the kitchen counter unopened. I hadn't touched a single one. I thought about throwing them away, but somehow that felt too dramatic. And I wasn't angry anymore. I was something worse. I was watching. The way a quiet storm watches the sky for a crack in the clouds. On Saturday evening, around 7:45, I was watering the plants by the front porch when my neighbor Judy called across the hedge. "Loretta, you looked lovely last night. I saw you drive off all dressed up. Where'd you all go for dinner?" I blinked. "Last night I wasn't out," I said slowly. "Why do you ask?" Judy tilted her head in confusion. "Oh, maybe I'm mixing up the days. I saw Meadow's car parked up the street near that big Italian place. The one with the string lights and the stone patio. They had a whole big group, kids' balloons, and someone brought a cake. Looked like a celebration." Her voice trailed off. Something inside me went still. "Did you see Elliot?" I asked. "Yeah. He was carrying that little girl Emma, right? Looked happy as ever." I smiled. Tightly. "Must have been someone else's birthday." "Maybe. Well, if you ever want to go there, I've got a coupon," she added brightly. I nodded, murmured thanks, and went back inside with a watering can that suddenly felt heavier than it should have. I didn't even need to look. But I did. I opened Facebook and scrolled, and there it was. A post from Meadow timestamped the night before. Nothing better than family pasta and laughter under the stars. Celebrating love and blessings tonight. Hashtag family night. Got grateful heart. And beneath it, a carousel of smiling faces. Emma is blowing out candles on a chocolate cake. Tommy is licking frosting from his fingers. Elliot with his arm around Meadow, wine in hand, eyes lit with the glow of patio lights. And in the corner of one frame, unmistakable, my sister Ruth, clapping, laughing, wearing the necklace I got her for Christmas last year. There was no mistaking it now. This wasn't forgetting, this was a replacement. I zoomed in on one of the photos. At the center of the table was a small white card written in gold cursive. I tilted my head. It read, "Reserved for Grandma." It wasn't for me. I wasn't there. By morning, I couldn't pretend anymore. Meadow had curated my absence. She didn't just exclude me. She replaced me gently, subtly, like you'd remove a photograph from a frame and slip in a new one that no one questions. The worst part, she made it look normal. That night, I reread the letter I'd written her after the cookies arrived. For a moment, I considered mailing it early, but something held me back. Something I couldn't quite name yet, but it pulsed in my fingertips like a thread I needed to follow. On Sunday afternoon, I went to drop off a library book. The librarian, an older woman with kind eyes, greeted me with her usual warmth. "Oh, Loretta, I saw the sweetest family at Trattoria Vino the other night. One of the little girls looked just like you. I almost waved, thinking you'd be there." I smiled again. Another witness, another clue. That night, I opened a folder on my desktop labeled Photos, Family. I clicked through old albums, one by one. In the early ones, birthdays, holidays, school concerts, I was always in the front row, holding hands, blowing balloons, cutting cake. Then gradually the photos changed. In the last 3 years I was still there, but farther back, on the edge of the frame, slightly out of focus. Sometimes just a hand holding a purse, a blurry shoulder, and then nothing. In the most recent albums, I was gone, not by accident, but by design. I remembered one Thanksgiving when Meadow forgot to tell me the location had changed. I'd shown up at Elliot's house with cranberry sauce and my mother's china. The lights were off. I waited 35 minutes before driving home. No one called. 2 days later, Meadow said she thought Elliot had told me. And Elliot? He believed her. That night I took out a pen and a notebook. Not for a letter. Not yet. This time I was making a list. All the moments I'd missed. All the stories that had changed. All the coincidences that weren't. Tommy's recital, Meadow told me grandparents weren't allowed due to COVID rules. But there were grandparents in the video she posted later. Emma's school art show. Oh, it was rescheduled, I forgot to text you. Except the flyer on the fridge said the same date all along. Family game night, it's just a casual thing with close friends. But photos showed Ruth Carl and even Elliot's boss in attendance. This wasn't a miscommunication. This was a campaign, a slow, methodical removal with a smile. The next morning I did something I hadn't done in years. I called Elliot directly. Not a group text, not a holiday thread, just a call. He answered after the third ring. "Hi, Mom. Everything okay?" His voice was cheerful, polite, a little distant. I kept my voice soft, neutral. I saw the photos from dinner, looked beautiful. He hesitated. "Oh, right, yeah." It was a bit spontaneous. It looked like Meadow planned it well. Everyone seemed happy. "She's good at that kind of thing," he said quickly. "You know," I continued, "I would have loved to be there." Emma's smile when she blew out those candles, it reminded me of you when you were her age. There was a long pause. "I'm sorry, Mom. We didn't mean to exclude you. Meadow said you had plans already." I smiled, sadly. Meadow always had something to say. "I didn't," I said gently. "But it's okay." He didn't respond. Not because he didn't care, but because he didn't know how to fight her. Yet. That night, I sat by the window with the letter I'd written still sealed in its envelope, and I began drafting a new one. This one wouldn't be mailed either. It would be hand-delivered at the right moment, when silence would no longer protect anyone. Because when someone works that hard to erase you, it means they're afraid of what will happen when you show up. It was a Tuesday. The air smelled like burnt toast and garden soil. I had been rearranging a shelf in the hallway, dusting off picture frames I hadn't dared to look at in months. In one of them, little Tommy had both arms thrown around my neck, a crooked paper crown on his head. "King of Cookies," the caption read, back when I still mattered. The doorbell rang just as I was replacing the frame. One long chime. No urgency. No rush. Just deliberate. I assumed it was Judy. She had a habit of popping over unannounced with leftover muffins and neighborhood gossip, so I didn't hurry. But the moment I glanced through the peephole, I paused. It wasn't Judy. It wasn't a neighbor. It wasn't anyone I'd ever seen before. He was mid-40s, dark hair going gray at the edges, wearing a navy sport coat like he'd tried to look professional but hadn't slept in days. There was something tight in the way he stood, like he was holding a breath or a secret. I cracked the door open slightly. Chain still latched. "Yes." He looked up quickly, startled, then gave a small nod. "Mrs. Patterson." "Who's asking?" "My name is David Chen. I need to talk to you. It's about Meadow." My stomach dropped. He said her name like he knew her, not casually but intimately. Like someone who had once loved her or been hurt by her. Or both. I tightened my grip on the doorframe. "What about Meadow?" He looked around the porch nervously. "Please. This will sound insane. But I think my son is living in your house." My heart skipped. My fingers went numb. "What Tommy?" he said. Brown hair, 7 years old, scar on his chin from falling off a bike. I stared at him. The scar. Elliot had called me the night it happened. Said Tommy took a spill down the driveway, scraped himself up badly. Meadow had insisted on rushing him to urgent care. "He's fine, Mom," Elliot had said. But scared. "He'll be fine." But how would this man, a stranger, know about that scar? "Come in," I said. He didn't touch the coffee I offered, just sat stiffly on the edge of my couch like a man on trial. "I'm sorry for barging into your life," he began, "but I've spent the last 3 months trying to decide if I had the right to do this." "Do what exactly?" "Tell the truth." He swallowed hard. "Meadow and I were together before she met your son. We lived together. For 2 years." I said nothing. I just listened. Like I always had. "She got pregnant. I was thrilled. Wanted to propose. She said she needed time. Then one day, she was gone. Everything. Clothes, toothbrush, and lease agreement. Vanished. I filed reports, hired a PI. Nothing." He rubbed his face. His hands were shaking. "3 months ago, I was at a conference in Sacramento. I saw her, walking down the street, holding the hand of a little boy who looked exactly like I did at that age." He took out his phone, found a photo, a scanned one, old and faded, of a child around 6. The resemblance to Tommy was staggering. Same jaw, same tilt of the head, same faint dimple on the right cheek. I felt cold. "I've been watching since," David said. "From a distance, just trying to piece it together." He reached into his coat and pulled out a sealed envelope. "DNA results. I managed to get a strand of Tommy's hair from a barber shop he went to with Meadow. Had it tested. He's mine, Mrs. Patterson." The room spun. "You're telling me I's whispered that Tommy isn't Elliot's son? 99.7% probability," he said. "I'm his biological father." Silence. Not heavy, but sharp. Like something had snapped beneath the floorboards of reality. I thought of Elliot. The day he called to tell me Meadow was pregnant. How excited he'd been. How quickly everything had moved: the engagement, the wedding, the baby's birth a little premature. Now it all made sense. She had found Elliot as a replacement. Not for love, but for cover. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. David looked at me with eyes that had practiced this moment over and over. "Because I saw something in your family that scared me." "What?" "That you were disappearing." "I beg your pardon. I've been watching Meadow's social media. Every post, every family photo. You're barely in any of them. It's like you're being written out." I looked down at my hands. They were trembling. "That's not a coincidence," he said quietly. "She did the same to me. Slowly made me think I was the one being too much, too involved, too emotional. She isolates." I said the words like ash on my tongue. "Exactly." He placed the DNA envelope on my coffee table. "I don't want to rip Tommy out of the only life he's known. But I can't let her keep lying to him, to you, to your son." "She'll deny it," I said. "Of course, she'll twist it. She's already twisting everything." We sat in silence. "You don't have to act now," David said gently. "But you deserve to know. You deserve a chance to protect your son before she erases him too." When he left, I didn't speak, didn't cry. I just sat on the couch staring at the cream envelope like it might catch fire. Outside, a car door slammed. I heard a child laugh. It sounded like Tommy. And I thought, he has no idea. No idea that the woman he calls mother is not who she pretends to be. That his place in this family was forged through lies. That the man who reads him bedtime stories might not be the only father who loves him. I didn't know what I'd do next. But I knew one thing: Meadow had built her castle on borrowed time. And that time just ran out. The letter sat untouched for 6 days. Still folded. Still sealed. Still addressed to Meadow in the same careful cursive I'd used when writing birthday cards for the children, back when they still called me Grandma without hesitation. I hadn't decided what to do with it, but I knew it wouldn't go in the mail. No. This wasn't a message for the postal service. This was a message for a room, a table, an audience, for Elliot, for the children, for the version of me that Meadow had tried to erase and who was finally preparing to speak. David and I met again the following Thursday. Not in my house, not in public. We picked the cemetery. He said it was strange. I told him it was safe. Nobody listens to people who talk among the dead. We stood under the sycamore tree where my husband was buried, Elliot's father. A man who had left this world with more dignity than comfort, but who'd always believed in kindness, sometimes too much. David brought a folder. This one is thicker than before. Everything's here, he said. Her real name, the timeline, the marriage records, the addresses, even photos from back then. He handed it to me without ceremony. I took it like I'd been handed the blueprints to a house I once lived in and barely survived. Inside were copies of 2 previous marriage licenses, 2 different last names, 2 different states. Same woman. One of the men had filed for divorce citing emotional manipulation and financial concealment. The other had nothing, just disappeared. There were also snapshots. A younger Meadow, or rather Margaret, with darker hair, thinner cheeks, and the same smile. That effortless, disarming expression that always fell somewhere between vulnerability and control. She had always looked like someone in the middle of a well-rehearsed performance. She changes shape, I murmured. David nodded. She makes herself exactly what they need. Then once she's secured, she starts the shift, cut ties, rearrange the social circle, isolate. She's done it to Elliot. She's done it to all of us. We stood in silence for a while. The wind shifted the leaves above us in brittle waves. Somewhere a crow made a single sharp cry and then vanished into silence. I didn't cry. I just took a deep breath, not out of sadness but to anchor myself, to prepare for what I was going to do next. That evening I cooked, not out of hunger, but out of muscle memory. That's what women like me do when the world becomes too much. We chop, we stir, we season. We create order through recipes passed down by hands that knew how to survive storms. I made Elliot's favorite stew, garlic, rosemary, slow-simmered memories. I left him a voicemail the next morning. Hi, sweetheart. I know things have felt disconnected. I was wondering if you and Meadow might come to dinner this weekend, just the 2 of you. I've been meaning to talk. It's important. A pause. Then I added, you always said Sunday dinners were your favorite. He didn't call back right away. I knew Meadow would intercept the message first. She always screened his emotional content before letting him respond. But Saturday evening, I got a reply. Dinner Sunday at 6 works. Thanks, Mom. No emoji. No elaboration. But it was enough. I spent Sunday cleaning the house, not to impress but to remember. I set the table with the blue-trimmed plates I had once saved for birthdays and anniversaries. The silverware that hadn't seen daylight in months. The napkins with stitched corners that my mother gave me after her last Christmas alive. I didn't do it for Meadow. I did it for Elliot. So he would remember what love used to feel like before it came with conditions. They arrived promptly at 6. Meadow wore white. Of course she did. Cream silk blouse, pearl earrings. The kind of look that said, I'm innocent, I'm delicate, I couldn't possibly be the villain in your story. Elliot looked tired, not just physically, but emotionally, as if somewhere buried deep he was beginning to suspect the truth, but still couldn't face it. I smiled warmly. Come in, dinner's almost ready. Over roast chicken and roasted squash we made small talk. Emma had started ballet. Tommy was trying soccer. Meadow was volunteering for a parent committee. She even asked me with that trademark half smile. You should come to the next recital, Loretta. Emma would love it. A beat too late, a beat too false. I nodded anyway. I'd like that. After dinner I poured coffee and brought out the envelope. The letter. The one I hadn't sent. I didn't place it in front of Meadow. I placed it in the middle of the table, like a neutral grenade. I wrote this a week ago, I said calmly. Before David Chen showed up at my door. Before I knew what I know now. Meadow didn't flinch. David, who Elliot asked, confused. Meadow reached for her purse. Reflex. I gently placed my hand on the envelope. Don't bother texting him. She froze. I looked at my son. Elliot, I need you to read this. And then I need you to listen. He hesitated, then reached for it. Meadow tried to stop him. Just a whisper of a movement, a flick of fingers. But it was too late. He opened the envelope. Inside were only two things: the original letter I'd written after receiving the cookies, and a copy of the DNA results from David. He read the first with a tightening jaw. He read the second with a trembling hand. This can't be real. It is, I said softly. This says I'm not… that Tommy… He couldn't finish the sentence. Meadow sat rigid, cold. Her eyes scanned everything, calculating. That's absurd, she said. Whoever this David is, he's lying. You know how easy it is to fake a document these days, Loretta. I'm disappointed in you. I smiled, the kind of smile you reserve for people who mistake your silence for stupidity. Your name isn't even Meadow, is it? That did it. Her face cracked just a little. Margaret Winters, I added. Nevada, 2012. Oregon, 2015. Ring a bell. Elliot stared at her like he was seeing a ghost. You told me you'd never been married. It wasn't important. They were mistakes. And I'm what? His voice rose. Your next experiment. Tommy's footsteps echoed in the hallway. I stood and gently shut the door between us. Not tonight, I whispered. Not yet. Back at the table, Meadow stood. You've always hated me, Loretta. From the beginning. I didn't hate you, I replied. I saw you, and that frightened you. I gave this family everything. No, you took everything that wasn't nailed down and called it yours. Elliot slumped in his chair. Is this true? He asked. Any of it? Meadow didn't answer. She didn't have to. Sometimes silence is the loudest confession of all. And in that moment, I didn't feel erased. I felt like the narrator again, the keeper of the family history, the one who remembered how it all began and now how it was going to change. Elliot didn't storm out of the room. He didn't raise his voice. Instead, he sat still, so still, that I wasn't sure if he was even breathing. The paternity test lay flat on the table between us. The numbers stared back at him, sterile and undeniable. His fingers curled around the edge of the paper like it might suddenly run away if he didn't anchor it. I waited. Not out of politeness, but because I remembered what it felt like when the ground under your memories shifts. When someone drops a match into the library of your life and you realize the stories you believed were yours might have been written by someone else. 99.7%, Elliot finally whispered. That's as close to a guarantee as you get. He looked at me, not in anger. Not yet. There was something far worse in his eyes. Shame. How could I not have known? Because you loved her, I said gently. And love blinds even the wisest hearts. He nodded slowly, like someone wading through fog. She told me Tommy came early, that it was a complicated pregnancy, but the doctor said everything was fine. I remembered that call. He was nervous, excited, a new father. I had asked if they needed help, and Meadow had insisted no, they wanted this time for themselves. Now I knew why. She never wanted me close, I said softly. Not really. She made sure there was always a reason, always a distraction. He rubbed his temples. So, David Chen, he's the real father. Biologically, yes. But you, Elliot, you were the one who stayed. You loved Tommy, raised him, and that doesn't disappear because of a DNA sequence. His hands trembled. But it matters, doesn't it? If she lied about this, what else was built on that lie? We sat for a while in silence, the kind that doesn't ask for conversation, the kind where truths rearrange themselves like furniture in a burned-down home. Eventually I stood and poured him tea. He took it but didn't sip. What should I do, Mom? He hadn't called me Mom with that tone in a long time. It wasn't a throwaway perfunctory label. It was a reach, a need. You need to protect your children, I said. Both of them. He winced. Tommy isn't… He is your child in every way that matters, I said firmly. But so is Emma. And if you don't take back control of your life, Meadow will continue rewriting it without you. That evening, Elliot didn't go home. He stayed. We sat at the kitchen table long after the dishes had been cleared, long after the sun had disappeared behind the lilacs in the backyard. He asked questions not all at once, but in pieces. How long do you think she's been planning this since the beginning? Was anything real? I didn't answer that. I didn't need to. Because sometimes silence is the loudest confirmation of all. By morning, we had a plan. I contacted David, asked him to meet us privately. When he arrived, Elliot shook his hand with a mix of caution and reverence. It was strange watching the man who unknowingly shared a son with my son. Two fathers, one truth, and a child between them who didn't yet know the magnitude of the storm that had been weathered on his behalf. I don't want to take him from you, David said gently. I just want to be part of his life, if that's still possible. Elliot looked at him for a long time. That depends on whether we survive the war. Meadow is about to start. They both laughed. It wasn't joyful, but it was real. We retained a lawyer, a woman named Camille Dunn, older, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who could slice through lies without ever raising her voice. The moment she read the documentation, she nodded. She'll run. We think so too, I said. Then we prepare for every possible move. And we beat her to the first one. Camille recommended we file for temporary custody orders and a request for family court mediation. We documented everything from Meadow's social media manipulation to her previous marriages. We even included screenshots of every missed holiday, every excuse, every instance where I had been forgotten. This paints a clear picture, Camille said. She's isolated you both. That shows intent. Elliot stared at the binder like it was a map to a past he hadn't known he was lost in. On Wednesday morning, Meadow showed her hand. A pale yellow envelope, hand-delivered. Her attorney's letterhead. Request for temporary full custody of both children, citing Elliot's emotional instability and potential influence from third parties with a vendetta. I read it 3 times before looking at Elliot. He shook his head. She's trying to cut me out. She's trying to finish what she started, I replied. I don't know what hurt Elliot more, that Meadow was using the children as pawns, or that she thought he wouldn't fight back. But something shifted in him that day. He stopped reacting and started responding. He filed his petition by Friday. With Camille's help, it was airtight. We attached the DNA results as context, not accusation. We submitted witness statements, financial records, even photos from the cruise, each one without me in it. A visual record of erasure. That night, Elliot came back to my house. He stood in the same kitchen he once ran through barefoot as a boy and said the sentence I never thought I'd hear again. Can I stay for a while? I nodded. And when he tucked Tommy in via a video call that Meadow supervised, tight-lipped, cold-eyed, I saw something flicker in her gaze. Fear. For the first time, she realized Elliot wasn't in her hands anymore. David came by the next morning. He didn't bring more evidence. He brought a soccer ball. Tommy loves playing, he said simply. Thought I'd show him some of my old moves, someday. Elliot watched from the window. He's a good man, he said. He's a father, I replied. Like you. It took 5 days for the court to respond. Emergency hearing scheduled. Both parties are required to appear. The message was clear. This family was no longer hers to rearrange. The night before the hearing, I sat at my desk and began writing again. Not letters this time, but memories. The first time Elliot rode a bike. The way Tommy used to curl up against me during thunderstorms. The sound of Emma's laugh when I let her stir the cake batter. I wrote them not because I was afraid I'd forget, but I needed to remember what we were fighting for. On the morning of the hearing, Elliot wore the same tie he had on the day he married Meadow. I adjusted it carefully like I used to before his school choir concerts. Do you think the judge will believe me? He asked. She doesn't need to believe you, I said. She needs to believe in the truth. When Meadow walked into the courtroom, she looked calm. Too calm. Her lawyer clutched a sleek leather briefcase like a trophy. Meadow didn't look at me. Not once. But when she saw David sitting beside us, hands folded calmly in his lap, her lips twitched. Elliot took the stand first. He didn't cry. He didn't accuse. He spoke like a man who had been asleep for years and finally opened his eyes. "I don't regret raising Tommy," he said. "But I regret the lies that robbed me of choices. I regret not asking questions sooner. I regret how I let someone convince me that my mother was irrelevant." He looked at me then. "I'm done letting anyone else define who belongs in my life." The judge asked David a single question. "Why did you wait so long to come forward?" His answer silenced the room. "Because I didn't want to destroy a child's life. I just wanted to protect it. And now I want to help rebuild it truthfully." Meadow never took the stand. Her attorney requested a recess. We didn't get a ruling that day, but we didn't need to. Because by the time we left that courthouse, something had shifted. Not just legally, but spiritually. Meadow knew. She had lost the thing she feared most: control. There's a kind of stillness that comes before you walk into court. It's not peace. It's not even calm. It's suspension, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks, where the clouds hold their breath and the sky hums with things unsaid. That's what the waiting room felt like. Elliot sat beside me, eyes locked on a spot on the wall. His tie was too tight, his fingers tugging at it now and then. On his other side, David flipped through a small file folder, rechecking notes he already knew by heart. Not one of us spoke. And yet, I've never felt more aligned with two people in my life. Three people: a father by biology, a father by choice, and a mother who was once erased from all of it. But not anymore. When the bailiff called our case number, Meadow walked in like she was stepping onto a stage, chin lifted, steps deliberate, her ivory dress tailored to perfection. She held Emma's small hand in one of hers. Tommy followed slightly behind, dragging his backpack like it weighed more than him. She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. The lines of her face were set in the kind of mask I'd seen before, practiced, charming, half innocent, half above it all. It was the same expression she wore the first time I met her, all sweetness and subtle steel. But today, that steel would meet something sharper. The courtroom wasn't crowded. Just a few other families, two social workers, and the judge, a woman in her 60s with tired eyes and a voice that had long since outgrown tolerance for theatrics. I liked her immediately. Camille sat with us at the petitioner's table. Meadow and her attorney, a slick-looking man in a navy suit and aggressive cufflinks, sat across. The judge adjusted her glasses and looked through the initial filings. "I understand we have a paternity dispute, an ongoing custody matter, and a concern about potential psychological manipulation within the family structure. Is that correct?" Meadow's attorney stood first. "Your Honor, our position is simple. Mrs. Martinez objection." Camille cut in, voice crisp. "Her legal name is Margaret Winters. We have documentation." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Let's make sure we're all being honest, shall we?" Meadow flinched barely. But I saw it. That first crack in the porcelain. Over the next hour, documents were entered into evidence: the DNA test, the marriage records from Nevada and Oregon. Photos from Meadow's social media show a consistent absence of the grandmother at major events. Statements from Ruth, my sister, describing Meadow's subtle discouragements. "Don't bother Loretta, she tires easily. She said she didn't want to come. She's probably busy." Lies. Screenshots of texts where Meadow redirected, reframed, or canceled plans. And finally, David's affidavit and timeline of his relationship with Meadow, detailing the months leading up to her sudden disappearance, at the same time she appeared in Elliot's life. When the judge asked who would like to speak first, Camille nodded to Elliot. My son stood, and for a moment I held my breath. He wasn't a boy anymore. He wasn't the passive, overly trusting man Meadow had quietly molded. He was something new now, someone waking up in full. "Your Honor." He began, his voice steady but quiet. "For 7 years I believed I was raising both of my children. I never questioned their parentage. I never questioned my wife, until the truth found me. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. The judge gave him her full attention. I'm not angry that Tommy isn't biologically mine. I love him, I always will, but I am angry that the choice to know the truth was taken from me, that the foundation of our family was built on deceit. He looked at Meadow now. And I'm devastated by how many moments were lost. Not just for me, but for my mother who was deliberately and systematically removed from our lives. Meadow finally spoke. Her voice was thinner than usual, as if her performance had a crack in its script. Elliot, I didn't do this to hurt you. I was young, scared. You were calculated, he interrupted. Don't confuse cowardice with fear. You chose to lie, and you kept lying, even when you didn't need to. The judge raised her hand. Let's keep statements directed to the bench. Elliot nodded, sat down. The judge turned to Meadow. Ms. Winters, I'd like to hear your response to the DNA results. You were under oath when you listed Mr. Patterson as the biological father on the birth certificate. How do you explain that? She hesitated. I believed it at the time, even though you had been with another man during the conception window. Yes, I didn't think it was possible. But when did David Chen approach you? Silence. Ms. Winters, I didn't know what to do, she said finally. Everything was already in motion. And that's when the judge turned to David. Mr. Chen, you waited several years before pursuing this. Why? David stood. Because I didn't want to destroy a child's world. But when I saw what Meadow was doing to the people around him, how she'd cut off his grandmother, manipulated his father, isolated him, I couldn't stay quiet. I had to protect him. The judge called a recess. As we stepped out into the hallway, Meadow approached us. Not Elliot, not me. David. Her voice was tight, still holding on to some last thread of control. You don't know what you're doing. You'll ruin his life. David looked at her calm as ever. I'm not here to ruin anything. I'm here to rebuild what you destroyed. And then she turned to me. Her voice dropped. You always hated me. No, I said. I hated the way you slowly erased me from the lives I helped build. I gave your son a family. No, I replied coldly. You gave him a fantasy. Back in court, the judge spoke with finality. It is the court's position that Tommy's custody must reflect his biological and emotional best interests. While Mr. Patterson may not be the biological father, he has acted in that role consistently and without dispute. Therefore, legal guardianship is to be shared jointly with Mr. David Chen and Mr. Elliot Patterson. Meadow's jaw dropped. What? And given the documented patterns of exclusion, deception, and misrepresentation, the judge continued, the court hereby limits Ms. Winters' custody to supervised visitation, pending further psychological evaluation and investigation into her prior marriages. I looked down. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the gravity of justice served. Meadow stood, her perfect composure breaking. You're destroying my life. No, the judge replied. You did that yourself. Outside, Elliot turned to David. So, I guess this makes us family. David extended his hand. That's okay with you. It's better than okay, Elliot said. It's right. And then they hugged, awkwardly, but sincerely, and something in my chest tight for years finally loosened. That night we had dinner together. All of us. At my house. Emma helped me stir the mashed potatoes. Tommy told David a joke that didn't quite make sense but had all the right comedic timing. Elliot brought a bottle of wine. And me, I set the table with my best china. Again. But this time everyone showed up. There's a strange hush that follows a courtroom victory. It's not a celebration, it's not joy. It's more like a hollow space where all the tension used to live, and now nothing echoes back except breath. The day after the ruling, I woke up before sunrise. Not from habit, from a habit broken. There was no cake to bake, no birthday party to plan, no text to read and pretend it didn't hurt, just silence. But for once it didn't feel empty. Elliot had taken the kids to his place for the weekend, a gesture I hadn't expected. After everything, after being lied to, after learning that Tommy wasn't his by blood, he still made breakfast. Still tied shoelaces. Still poured milk exactly the way Emma liked it. No bubbles and just a splash of chocolate syrup. He didn't need a paternity test to know he was their father. He just was. David had gone quiet after the verdict. Not in avoidance, but in reverence. As if he understood that something sacred had just shifted, a door had opened, and he wasn't going to rush through it. He sent one message that night. Thank you for standing up for him when I couldn't. I didn't reply right away. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew too well. On Monday, Elliot called me. Can we come over after school? Of course, they've been asking. About me, about everything. They arrived just before 5. Tommy bounded in first, the same way he used to before Meadow started pruning his affections like she was trimming a garden that didn't belong to her. Grandma, guess what? I scored a goal at recess. His arms wrapped around my waist before I could respond, and the hug lasted longer than it used to. Not rushed, not afraid. Emma followed behind, quieter, holding a drawing she'd made, a simple crayon sketch me, her Tommy and Elliot in front of a house with a dog. We don't have a dog, I smiled gently. Not yet, she said. But I told Daddy we should get one now that the house feels different. I blinked. Different how? She looked up, thoughtful, lighter. Elliot came in last, tired but softer. There was something about his eyes, like he'd laid down a burden that had been stitched into his shoulders so long he forgot it was there. They asked about Meadow, he said, once the kids had gone off to play. What did you tell them? That she's taking time away? That it's not their fault? That they're safe, loved, and nothing about that has changed? That's the truth, I said. It is. He nodded, and they believed it. Because this time, it came from me. We sat in the kitchen, the same one I'd stood in on my 65th birthday, lighting candles that melted into disappointment. Now the scent of baked chicken filled the air. The laughter of children drifted in from the next room, and my son poured me a glass of wine with steady hands. How are you doing, Elliot? He stared at the glass. I'm ashamed, he said finally. Not just because of the lie, but because I let her dim me. She didn't dim you, I said gently. She distracted you. There's a difference. I pushed you away. You thought you had to choose between peace and truth, and you chose peace. Was it worth it? He whispered. I paused, then looked toward the hallway where my grandchildren's footsteps pattered. It brought them here, didn't it? He smiled, not fully. But enough. That night, Tommy asked if he could sleep over. I miss your bedtime stories, he said. The pirate ones. So I tucked him in, just like old times. Except this time no one stopped me. No one texted 5 minutes later to say they were on their way to pick him up. No one undermined the hug I gave him. No one said I was overstepping. I wasn't a visitor anymore. I was home. Over the next few weeks, things began to settle. Meadow's visitation rights were suspended pending psychological review. She didn't appeal. She didn't send a letter, didn't call, didn't ask. It was as if she'd vanished the same way she had from David's life all those years ago. Except this time, she left behind footprints and children. David began stopping by more. Not all the time, not to intrude, but gently, gradually. He helped with school pickups, soccer practice. He brought Emma a pink hairbrush shaped like a flower and asked if he could borrow one of her drawings to hang in his office. She said yes, then gave him 3. One afternoon I found them in my backyard. David was teaching Tommy how to plant tulip bulbs. They'll bloom in spring, he said. You just have to wait and water them, even when it feels like nothing's happening. Tommy looked skeptical. That sounds boring. David chuckled. Some of the best things grow while we're not watching. Later, Elliot and I sat on the back porch watching them. Do you think I should tell him? He asked. Tell who what, Tommy? About David. About the truth. I didn't answer right away. The sun was dipping low, painting the fence with a kind of gold that made everything look softer. Children don't need the whole truth all at once, I said. They need presence, consistency, love. The rest comes when they're ready. Elliot nodded slowly. I just don't want him to feel like everything was a lie. Then show him everything else was real. We began creating new rituals. Friday dinners at my place, Saturday soccer with David, Sunday pancakes at Elliot's apartment. No one replaced anyone. We expanded instead. The way families should be when the foundation cracks, not by erasing, but by rebuilding. And then one morning, 6 weeks after the hearing, I got a letter. No return address. But I knew the handwriting. It was Meadow. Loretta. I'm sorry. Not for everything, I'm not there yet. But I'm sorry for the way I treated you. I see now how I tried to control everything I feared. You were never the threat I imagined. You were just there. And I couldn't stand the way they loved you without effort. I don't expect forgiveness. But I hope one day when the kids ask about me, you won't make me a monster. I tried to be enough. I failed. I folded the letter, placed it in a small box where I kept other things the kids had given me, handmade cards, school pictures, misspelled poems. And I whispered, I won't make you a monster. But I won't make you a saint either. Healing didn't come all at once. Some days Emma cried for reasons she didn't understand. Some nights Tommy asked if Meadow still loved him. Elliot had moments where he stared too long into nothing, as if reliving arguments he'd once convinced himself never happened. But we walked through all of it, together. One afternoon, David asked if he could share a birthday party with Tommy, a joint celebration. Elliot agreed. As long as Mom bakes the cake, Tommy insisted. So I did. Vanilla with buttercream frosting, 2 sets of candles, 1 family. That night as I cleaned the kitchen, Elliot came up behind me and rested a hand on my shoulder. You saved us, he said. No, I replied, turning to look at him. We saved each other. And I meant it. Certain dates carve themselves into your bones. December 25th used to be one of them. For years I had performed Christmas like a silent stagehand. Orchestrating meals, wrapping gifts no one acknowledged came from me pretending not to notice when family photos were taken without me in the frame. Meadow made it look accidental. Forgotten invites. Sudden schedule changes. Oh, Loretta didn't want to drive in the snow. She said she'd rather have a quiet one this year. I used to go along with it. I told myself I was giving them space. But space, when weaponized, becomes isolation. This year was different. Because this year there were no lies left to cover her absence. It started with a knock on my door the week before Thanksgiving. Emma stood there in a maroon coat holding a stack of construction paper turkeys and a notebook. I'm the planner now, she declared. Are you now? Yep. Daddy said we need new traditions. I'm in charge of table decorations. I opened the door wider. Then you'd better come in, Miss Coordinator. We baked pies that afternoon the way I used to with Elliot when he was 6. Emma wasn't as neat. She spilled flour in her hair, sneezed into the cinnamon bowl, and insisted the crust needed extra pinchies because that's how it looks cozy. I didn't correct her. Because it did look cozy. And for the first time in years, I realized the kitchen didn't remember Meadow. It remembered love. On Thanksgiving morning, Tommy arrived carrying a basket of rolls he had totally made by himself, which by the look of the lopsided dough balls might have been true. Elliot came bearing the turkey. David brought wine and green bean casserole. Emma brought a clipboard. We are following the family agenda, she announced, flipping pages. Dinner at 3 Hezro. Board game at 5:30. Hot cocoa at 7 Hezro. Compliment circle at 7:30. Compliment circle? Elliot asked, raising an eyebrow. You each have to say something you love about everyone else. What happens if we don't? Grandma makes you eat another slice of pie. I leaned over. You didn't run this by legal. I am legal, she replied with 6-year-old conviction. And just like that, between laughter and spilled gravy and a game of charades that made no sense, we had a new tradition. One where everyone was seen. A week later, a small envelope arrived in the mail. No return address, but a postmark from Phoenix. Inside, a Christmas card with stock photography snowflakes and the words, "Wishing you peace." Signed Meadow, nothing else. No note, no apology, just a generic greeting from someone who used to control every holiday minute. I didn't show it to Elliot. I placed it quietly into the drawer where I kept expired coupons and batteries I wasn't sure still worked. Some things you don't need to display, you just learn from them. December came with snow early this year. Tommy dragged a pine tree through the front yard like he was conquering Everest. "We need a real tree," he said. "Not one from a box like before." Elliot helped him set it up. David strung the lights. Emma and I added ornaments, including one she made from a paper plate and glitter that refused to stay where it belonged. We played old records, burned cookies, and sang off key, and no one checked their phone once. On Christmas Eve, we opened one gift each, a new rule Emma created. Tommy got a puzzle. Emma unwrapped a book of fairy tales. David received a mug that said "World's Okayest Dad," and he laughed so hard I thought he might cry. Elliot handed me a small box. Inside was a silver pendant, a tiny tree engraved with initials, E, T, E, D, and L. "It's not blood," he said quietly, "but it's roots." I touched the necklace, my fingers trembling. "You didn't have to." "No," he said, "but I should have, years ago." I closed my hand around the pendant. "It's not about when, Elliot. It's about now." That night, after everyone had gone home, I walked into the living room and stared at the tree. The lights glowed faintly, casting shadows that danced against the walls. I thought of Christmases past, of waiting, of being forgotten, smiling through stories I wasn't part of. And then I thought of tonight, of children's voices, of gifts chosen with meaning, of a table full, not just with food, but with presence. And I whispered just once into the quiet, "Thank you." On New Year's Eve, Emma insisted we write wishes for the future on slips of paper and put them in a jar. "We'll open them next year and see what came true." "What if they don't?" Tommy asked. "Then we try again. Even if they all fail." She shrugged. "That just means we get to wish bigger." I wrote mine after midnight, alone with the fireplace still glowing and snow gently falling outside. To never feel invisible again. To speak without apology. To be the woman I forgot I could be. I folded it, placed it in the jar, and smiled. By mid-January, Elliot and David had worked out a rhythm. Joint pickups, shared weekends, doctor's visits handled in tandem. The school adjusted records, dual guardianship for both men. No protest from Meadow. Not a single message since the card. The silence was complicated. Not unwelcome, not mourned, just noted. Like the space where a chapter ends. One Saturday morning, Tommy asked Grandma, "Why don't we see Meadow anymore?" He was sitting at the table, legs swinging beneath the chair, a cereal spoon in hand. I paused. Because sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt others. And when that happens, they need time to figure themselves out. "Will she come back?" "I don't know, sweetheart. That depends on her." He nodded. "I think I like it better now." I looked at him, startled. "Why?" "Because we all laugh more." He took another bite, unconcerned. And my heart broke in a new way, the kind that cracks open to let light in. By February, the holidays felt like more than memories. They felt like beginnings. A birthday party for Emma, complete with a cake shaped like a unicorn that I ruined, but she adored anyway. A Valentine's card from Tommy, hand-drawn, that read, "You're my grandma. Not step or bonus or half, just mine." David brought flowers that day, not for romance, for gratitude. "Thank you for holding space for me," he said. "Thank you for stepping into it," I replied. And in quiet moments, those spaces where I used to ache, I began to dream again, of art classes, or maybe a trip to the coast, of writing down my story, not for revenge, not for validation, but so that if Emma ever felt erased, she'd know how to rewrite herself. And if Tommy ever felt confused, he'd know where to begin. And if Elliot ever forgot, he could reread the parts where he came back to himself. And me, I'd remember that even a broken tradition can still light up the room, as long as it starts with truth. I didn't sit down to write it out of anger. Anger had come and gone. It had burned through me during those long nights when I couldn't sleep, when every memory of Meadow felt like a thorn I couldn't remove. When I'd stare at family photos that used to mean something and wonder which parts were ever real. But this wasn't about her anymore. This letter, it was for me. It was a gray Tuesday when I finally brought the stationery out, the nice set Elliot had given me one Mother's Day, years ago, when he still believed I was the glue holding everything together. Cream paper, gold trim. It had felt too beautiful for bills, too personal for recipes. Now it felt just right. I started like this. Dear Loretta, if you're reading this, it means you've survived her. Not Meadow, not by name, just her. Because she wasn't one woman, she was many. The woman who smiles while subtly excluding you. The woman who rewrites family rituals without asking. The woman who turns your love into a threat simply because it came before hers. You probably know someone like her. Maybe you lived with her. Maybe she married your son. Maybe she never looked at you directly, but still made you disappear. I wrote about the birthday party, the roast that went cold, the candles that melted into silence, the cake sat untouched. I described the moment my chest cracked, not from grief, but from clarity. They didn't forget. They chose not to come. And that choice opened my eyes. I described the cruise photos, how I stared at them until the screen blurred, how Meadow stood in the center as if that had always been her rightful place. I didn't describe her beauty or her dress or her confidence. Those were never the weapons. Her weapon was narrative, the one where I was the afterthought, the outdated character in a story she wanted to write without me. And I let her, for years. I smiled, bit my tongue, told myself peace is better than being right, until I realized peace without presence is just exile in disguise. The letter wasn't just a confession, it was a reminder of how many holidays I spent waiting for a knock that never came, of how many times I sat at school events only to realize the show had happened yesterday, of how Emma's hugs slowly faded, how Tommy's stories have shortened, how Elliot's voice took on that distant, clipped tone like I was a customer, not his mother. But I also wrote about what came next. Not just the courtroom, not just the DNA results, the real victories. The first time Emma climbed onto my lap again without glancing over her shoulder. The morning Tommy asked if I'd come to his soccer game because it's more fun when you cheer. The afternoon Elliot stood in my kitchen quietly chopping carrots like he'd never left. And the night David sat across from me, eyes tired but open, and said I thought I lost him. But you helped me find him again. I told myself the letter would be for my drawer, for my heart. But something kept urging me to finish it like it was meant to be read not by Meadow, but by someone else. By the next woman. The mother-in-law who feels erased. The grandmother is slowly being untethered. The woman whose silence is mistaken for consent. So I wrote directly to her. You're not too sensitive. You're not imagining it. You're not difficult. You're being ghosted in real time while sitting at the same table. But you are not invisible, and you are not alone. I remembered something Ruth once told me years ago, back when Meadow was still playing sweet. She's afraid of you, Loretta, not because you're cruel, but because you're proof that love came before her. At the time, I brushed it off. But she was right. Women like Meadow aren't scared of confrontation. They're scared of witnesses, women who remember timelines, who knows the real version of their sons, who holds baby photos, recalls birth dates, and can say, that's not how it happened. So they silence you, with passive aggression, with missed invites, with we thought you wouldn't be interested, and eventually, with silence. But here's the part I wrote with shaking hands. Forgive her. Not to absolve her, but to unchain yourself. Because here's what Meadow never understood. Excluding someone doesn't delete them. It just turns them into a witness with a longer memory. By the time I finished writing, the house was quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't ache. Outside, snow was falling softly. Inside, the kitchen still smelled faintly of cinnamon from the cookies Emma and I had baked earlier. I folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, and wrote 2 words on the front for her. I didn't mail it. I tucked it into the bookshelf between an old family photo album and a worn paperback copy of Little Women. Because someday Emma might ask about this year. She might ask why things changed. Why Meadow isn't in the pictures anymore, and I won't give her gossip. I'll give her the truth. Wrapped in paper, laced with dignity, and written not in anger, but in knowing. Later that week, Tommy asked if we could plant a tree in the yard. To remember this new family, he said. We chose a young dogwood. Elliot dug the hole. David watered the roots. Emma added a hand-painted rock with all our initials. And me, I pressed my palms into the soil and felt something settle beneath my skin. Not grief, not revenge, not even victory, just grounding. The auditorium smelled like pencil shavings and orange peels, the unmistakable scent of elementary schools everywhere. Rows of folding chairs stretched out across a dull tile floor. On stage construction paper stars a hand-painted banner that read, Student of the Month Assembly, Character Counts. And somewhere behind that curtain was Tommy. I arrived early. Old habit. The same way I used to long ago when Elliot was that age, and the only thing he feared more than math tests was me not showing up. Back then, I'd sit in the second row on the left, camera-ready cardigan in my lap. Back then, he always looked for me before stepping on stage. I wasn't sure if Tommy would, but I was there. The auditorium filled slowly. Parents with phone cameras, teachers wrangling kindergartners, the usual buzz of pride and boredom and noise. David slipped into the seat next to me, a quiet nod between us. He looked comfortable here now, no longer a stranger in a story someone else wrote. He held a manila envelope in one hand. I didn't ask what was inside. He'd share when he was ready. Then came Elliot with Emma trailing behind him like a shadow in pink tulle. Is it too late to get good seats? He whispered. You're just in time. Emma crawled into my lap. I brought snacks. But we're not supposed to crinkle. She held up a granola bar already halfway open. I won't tell. I smiled. The lights dimmed. The principal, a round man with too much hair gel and a voice too loud for the mic, welcomed us all and launched into the usual speech about integrity, kindness, and responsibility. I tuned out. Not out of disrespect, but because my ears were listening elsewhere. To the steady heartbeat under Emma's cheek, to the way Elliot's leg bounced nervously, to the faint rustle of David's fingers smoothing the envelope on his lap. We were all holding something today. They called Tommy's name last, for leadership, for empathy, and for always including others. Congratulations to Tommy Patterson. Applause. Lights. A small freckled boy stepping out onto the stage with shoulders squared like he'd trained for it. He glanced toward the audience and found me, right away, and smiled. Not the quick kind of children give out of obligation. The real kind. The I'm glad you're here kind. He took the certificate from his teacher, shook her hand, turned back toward the audience, and waved, with both arms. Elliot teared up. David exhaled. Emma whispered. He remembered the compliment circle. After the ceremony, the children streamed out like a parade of paper crowns and juice boxes. Tommy barreled toward us, certificate in hand. Did you see me? I saw everything I said, even when I tripped on the step, especially then. We walked out together, the 5 of us. People stared. 2 men, 1 woman, 2 children, 1 strange orbit. We didn't explain. We didn't owe anyone that. Outside on the lawn, under a tree that still hadn't decided if it was spring yet, David handed me the envelope. What's this? Something I've been working on. Inside a photo. Black and white. Clean lines. A document from the county. Name. Change request. David Chen Patterson. Are you sure I asked? It's not for me, he said. It's for Tommy. He already sees you as his dad. And now I want the world to see it too. He paused. But I also want him to see you. In that name. Every time he writes it down. My throat tightened. I looked at Elliot. He nodded. He asked if he could have a last name that sounded more like all of us. So we gave him one, David said. And I wanted mine to match. That afternoon we gathered in my kitchen the same way we had for months now. Tommy sat at the table working on a diorama of the solar system. Emma colored beside him. David and Elliot sorted through a drawer looking for glue that hadn't dried up. I baked. Not because I had to, because I could. And as the apple pie cooled on the counter, I stepped back and took in the scene. No perfection, just presence. At dinner, Tommy cleared his throat dramatically. I have an announcement. We waited. I think we should start calling this house the real house. Why? Elliot asked. Because everything important happens here. He looked at each of us. Like when I got 2 dads. And when Emma got better at coloring inside the lines. And when Grandma stopped being lonely. I froze. Not because he was wrong, but because no one had ever named it out loud. Not even me. Later, when the dishes were done, and the kids had fallen asleep on the couch mid-movie, Elliot and I stood by the window. You did it, he said. Did what you brought us back. No, I said, smiling faintly. We brought ourselves forward. He placed a hand on my shoulder. I don't think I ever said thank you. For what? For staying, even when we didn't deserve it. I turned toward him. You were never the one I wanted to leave. He nodded, his eyes glistening. And for the first time in years, I saw the little boy again. The one who trusted me to show up. That night, I wrote a final note. Not a letter, not a speech, just a sentence. I slipped it into the drawer beside the silver pendant, the photo of the cruise and the court document. It read, "This is what family looks like now. And it's more than I ever dared to hope for." What about you? Have you ever been quietly pushed out of your own family? Ever stayed silent so long they forgot you were still there? Leave a comment below. I'm still here, if you've ever felt the same. And remember, real family is where you're seen, not where you have to fight to exist. If this story touched you, please like the video. It helps it reach someone who needs it. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories that remind us we're not alone. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Your presence here means more than you know.